Real Madrid wants Yan Diomandé. PSG thought they already had him. That's the situation right now. And it's turning into one of the biggest transfer fights of the summer. Real Madrid has put a €100 million offer on the table for a 19-year-old winger who'd already shaken hands with PSG on personal terms. Let's get into how Madrid moved in, what PSG is doing about it, and where this deal actually stands. So here's where things stand right now. Real Madrid has sent shockwaves through the transfer market with a surprise €100 million bid for RB Leipzig winger Yan Diomandé. Not a soft inquiry, not a keeping tabs situation. An actual bid submitted on paper. The initial offer from Real Madrid stands at €100 million, broken down into €90 million guaranteed and €10 million in bonuses. Fabrizio Romano, the guy whose tweets basically function as transfer scripture at this point, confirmed the structure himself. Romano reports that Real has submitted a €100 million bid, comprising €90 million up front and €10 million in add-ons. Though Leipzig have rejected the offer as they hold out for a package closer to €130 million. Now here's the part that makes this whole thing wild. This isn't a kid nobody wanted. This is a player PSG believed they'd already locked down. Diomandé had decided to join PSG and agreed a contract until 2031. But Leipzig would only sell for an exceptional fee. Personal terms done, number on the shirt basically picked out. And then Madrid walked straight through the middle of it. He'd agreed personal terms with the European champions earlier in the window. But PSG struggled to agree terms with Leipzig after weeks of talks, and now faces considerable competition for his signature. Weeks, that's the key word. While PSG was going back and forth on the fee, Madrid built a file, got their scouts in the stands, and struck. And this wasn't some backdoor whisper campaign either. Madrid's interest came out fast and loud, with no progress seemingly having been made on a move to Paris for Diomandé. Real Madrid sensed an opportunity. That's basically the entire dynamic in one sentence. PSG stalled, Madrid pounced. PSG's side of this hasn't been quiet either. This deal has had real institutional weight behind it from the Parisian end. We're talking about the club president getting personally involved. PSG is the move Diomandé wants, yet there was no official bid from them. Although PSG president Nasser Al-Khelaifi held talks with the German club, Al-Khelaifi on the phone trying to close this himself. That's how much PSG wanted this one, and it still wasn't enough to keep Madrid out. Leipzig, for their part, tried to shut the door before Madrid could even walk through it. RB Leipzig's sporting director, Marcel Schäfer, went public with a line that was clearly aimed at cooling all the noise. Our intention is clearly that Yan Diomandé plays for RB Leipzig next year, Schäfer said. Translation: nobody's leaving this summer if we can help it. Except Schäfer's own club priced this like a farewell tour, not a lockdown. The Bundesliga club valued Diomandé at around €130 million, well above the close to €100 million Liverpool approach reported earlier in the window. And they're still trying to push him toward a new deal that runs until 2030. You don't slap a €130 million tag on a guy you actually plan to keep. You slap that number on a guy you're bracing to lose and want maximum value for when it happens. Sky Germany broke down Madrid's exact numbers, and they match Romano's reporting almost line for line. Sky Germany reported that Madrid's offer was turned down, stating the proposal consisted of an initial £76.9 million, plus £8.5 million in performance-related add-ons. Same bid, different currency conversion, same result, rejected, but very much alive. And Madrid didn't stumble into this by accident. This has apparently been building behind the scenes for a while. Real Madrid's chief scout, Juni Calafat, tracked Diomandé closely throughout the World Cup. And multiple reports indicate the player himself favors a move to the Spanish capital over rival offers from Liverpool and PSG. Read that again, Calafat wasn't reacting to PSG's stall. He was already building the case for Madrid to jump in months before this window even opened. So to be clear on the stakes here, this isn't Madrid casually shopping. The move for Diomandé is their most audacious yet this summer, after a window that's already included major additions. Real have made great strides to overhaul Jose Mourinho's squad this summer, and are said to be in the market to add Manchester City's Rodri, after adding the likes of Ibrahima Konate and Denzel Dumfries earlier in the window. Diomandé isn't a depth signing on that list, he's the marquee one. Alright, so let's back up. Who actually is this kid that's got Real Madrid, PSG, Liverpool, Arsenal, Bayern Munich, and Manchester United all circling at once? A year ago, nobody outside of Segunda División football knew his name. It's extraordinary to think that this time last year, Diomandé's entire senior career amounted to half a dozen starts for Leganés, at the back end of last season as they were relegated from La Liga. 6 starts for a team going down. That's the entire resume before all of this exploded. But those 6 games were enough to turn heads because of what he did in them. He scored in 2 of those 6 games, against Espanyol and Valladolid, and even his team didn't find the net in the other 4. So basically, in the games where Leganés actually scored a goal, it was Diomandé scoring it. That's the kind of stat line that gets scouts calling their bosses on a Saturday night. Before any of that, he wasn't even a paid professional. Diomandé was signed by Leganés as a free agent for the reserve team in 2024 and was promoted to the first team in January 2025 after finishing as the top scorer of the USPL Finals Series. Free agent to first team difference maker in about 12 months. And then, within another 12 months, the subject of a 9-figure European transfer fight. That's the trajectory we're dealing with here. RB Leipzig moved fast to grab him before anyone else could. In what was described as a surprise deal, the Bundesliga club beat several clubs to secure the signing of the Ivorian teenager, who'd emerged as one of the hottest prospects in Spanish football despite Leganés' relegation. The fee wasn't small for a Segunda side either. The €20 million deal made Diomandé's switch one of the 5 most expensive in Segunda División history, with only players like Darwin Núñez and Pedri moving for more. Leipzig basically identified this kid before the rest of the continent had even opened the file, and got him at what now looks like a discount price. When the move went through, Diomandé sounded like a kid who genuinely couldn't believe it. He said it felt like an honor to get the chance to play for a club of Leipzig's stature, and that the fast, attacking style the coaching staff wanted suited him perfectly. He just wanted to get out there and meet his new teammates as soon as possible, in comments given through the club's official statement. Then the season actually started, and the numbers backed up the hype completely. He wasn't just a squad rotation piece. He became a genuine first-team factor in the Bundesliga almost immediately, racking up goal contributions across a full campaign of minutes rather than cameo appearances. And it wasn't just club football. The international stage is where the rest of Europe really got their eyes on him. Diomandé played a key role for Ivory Coast at the World Cup, notching 1 assist in 4 matches as Les Elephants exited in the last 32. 4 games, a tournament assist, and a spot as a regular starter for his national team at 19 years old. Wanted by Bayern Munich and Paris Saint-Germain, according to reporting at the time, with more suitors piling on by the week. By the time this summer rolled around, this wasn't a hidden gem anymore. Everyone had seen the tape. The Ivorian winger had been of interest to a number of clubs so far this summer, notably Liverpool and Paris Saint-Germain, with Arsenal also linked. 4 genuine European heavyweights, all wanting the same teenager. All within about 12 months of him playing Segunda División football for a relegated side. That's the guy Real Madrid decided to go all in for. Now let's talk about how PSG actually got into this position. Because for a long stretch of the summer, this deal looked basically done in their favor. PSG's interest wasn't a late add-on. It was described from early on as their #1 priority in attack. Yan Diomandé was a priority target for PSG to reinforce their attacking sector. And Paris Saint-Germain wanted to continue their recruitment after wrapping up other business, targeting the offensive line specifically. And PSG's sporting leadership had lined this up as one of exactly 2 names at the top of the board. Yan Diomandé and Magnus Akliouch were the 2 priority targets for Luis Campos and Luis Enrique. This wasn't a nice-to-have. This was one of the 2 guys they built the entire summer plan around. And for a while, it looked like they'd already won the race. Despite Liverpool's push, the Parc des Princes side won the favor of the 19-year-old winger, and an agreement had already been found on the terms of a 5-year contract in the French capital. Personal terms done, contract length agreed. All that was left was the fee, and that's exactly where it fell apart. Liverpool's part in this is actually where the whole triangle starts. They were in first and they were in hard. Liverpool, it's understood, was willing to table a package worth a total of €100 million for Diomandé. That's a serious number for a club that's usually disciplined about spending on unproven teenagers. But the numbers only tell half the story. Liverpool had a specific hole to fill. At Liverpool, the player would have had the clearest route to minutes after the departure of Mohamed Salah, with the Egyptian yet to announce his next move after departing Anfield a year before his contract expired. Liverpool basically offered him the closest thing to guaranteed starts of anyone in the race. And it still wasn't enough because the player's head was somewhere else entirely. Liverpool withdrew their interest in the 19-year-old in late June, after seeing having bids for his services rejected and being informed of his preference to move to Paris. That's a club being told in plain terms, don't bother, he wants PSG. So they walked quietly and pretty quickly, given how much money they'd been ready to spend. Sky Sports reporting laid out just how firm Liverpool's ceiling was compared to what was actually needed to get the deal done. Liverpool had also expressed interest in Diomandé, but weren't willing to pay more than £85 million. And even at that number, they'd already have been setting a record. The fee Liverpool were ready to pay would have dwarfed the Premier League's record transfer for a teenager, surpassing the £58.9 million Manchester United agreed to sign Lenny Yaro from Lille for in the summer of 2024. So we're talking about a fee that would have broken a Premier League record. And Diomandé still said no thanks, I want Paris. That's the level of pull PSG had on this kid at one point in the summer. He turned down a record-breaking Liverpool package with a clear path to first-team minutes, to sign for a club where he'd be fighting for space in a stacked front line. PSG already had Kvaratskhelia, Desiré Doué, and Ousmane Dembélé occupying wide areas. He wanted Paris anyway, that's how strong the pull of that project was for him. But wanting to go somewhere and actually getting there are two different things once the finances get involved. Weeks turned into a month, then into 2. And PSG still hadn't turned their agreement with the player into an actual transfer with Leipzig. That gap between a done personal deal and a stalled club-to-club fee is exactly the crack that let Madrid in. That gap between a done personal deal and a stalled club-to-club fee is exactly the crack that let Madrid in. And once Madrid smelled that crack, they didn't just quietly test the waters. They went in with a full written bid, matching the exact number Liverpool had already failed with, and used their financial muscle to try to force Leipzig's hand where PSG couldn't. Different approach, same target, same number Liverpool had tried before them. After Liverpool's initial €100 million offer in recent weeks, RB Leipzig had also rejected the La Liga giants' bid. 2 different €100 million bids from 2 different super clubs, both knocked back by the same German side within the space of a few weeks. So why is Leipzig holding out so hard against not 1, not 2, but potentially 3 separate 9-figure offers? This is where it gets interesting, because it's not stubbornness for its own sake. There's real business logic behind every single no. Start with the valuation gap. Everyone keeps bidding around €100 million, and Leipzig keeps saying it's not close. According to Bild, Madrid had already submitted an opening offer worth around €100 million. Though Leipzig rejected the proposal, the Bundesliga side are believed to value the Ivory Coast international closer to €130 million, with reports suggesting a compromise around €120 million could eventually be possible. So there's actually a landing zone here, not at €100 million. Somewhere between €120 and €130 million. That's the real number Madrid needs to be ready to hit if they want this to actually close. And Leipzig has leverage most selling clubs don't, a contract that isn't close to expiring. Diomandé has decided to join PSG and agreed a contract until 2031, but Leipzig will only sell for an exceptional fee. Wait, that's actually his PSG personal terms, not his Leipzig deal. But the point stands on the Leipzig side too. The Bundesliga side also hoped to convince the young Ivorian to sign a new contract, despite having a further 4 years to run on his current deal. 4 years left, no urgency to sell at all. Every offer that comes in under their number, they can just say no and mean it. There's also a name in this deal that doesn't get nearly enough attention, Leganés. The club that sold him in the first place, sitting quietly on a clause that's about to pay off massively. The move would also provide a financial windfall for Leganés, who reportedly retained a 10% sell-on clause when Diomandé departed Spain last summer, meaning any deal worth well over €100 million would generate another substantial payday for the Segunda club. Think about that, a club that got him for essentially nothing as a free agent reserve player is sitting on a clause worth potentially over €10 million from a transfer they're not even part of anymore. That's the kind of story that usually gets buried under the bigger names, but it's real money for a club his size. Now on top of all the pure transfer economics, there's a separate legal mess trailing this whole deal that adds friction nobody outside the football finance world usually hears about. There's an ongoing dispute between Diomandé and his previous representatives, Maxidal Management. The winger signed for Rock Nation Sports earlier this year, and Maxidal Management have taken the case to the Court of Arbitration for Sport, or CAS. That's not nothing. Any move this size usually needs everyone's paperwork clean. And right now, his old representation is actively contesting things in arbitration. That hasn't stopped a single club from circling, but it does add a layer of noise. That situation hasn't stopped clubs from circling, but it does add noise around any eventual deal. For Real Madrid, it means any move would need to move quickly, if they want to stay ahead of PSG and the Premier League clubs still watching closely. So Madrid isn't just racing PSG on price, they're racing a legal clock too. And here's the number that actually matters most heading into the final stretch of this saga. Forget the 100 million euros opening bid. That was never going to be the closing number. For Leipzig, the next number that matters is simple, 130 million euros. That's the fee they're said to want before they even consider letting Diomandé go this summer. So where does Madrid's money come from to even get near that? This isn't happening in a vacuum. It's tied directly to another deal that stalled out completely on the other side of Madrid's summer plan. Real Madrid's offer for Diomandé comes as the club's long-running pursuit of Michael Olise continues to meet resistance, with Bayern Munich holding a much steeper valuation on their own winger. Real Madrid have been searching for a right-sided attacking option after abandoning hopes of signing Michael Olise, according to reporting citing The Athletic. That reshuffling matters because Madrid's actual spending plan for Olise involved a totally different scale of money and timeline. According to Diario as Joaquin Maroto, Madrid's plan reportedly started with generating funds through outgoing sales, before formalizing anything with Bayern, with the eventual proposal framed around a fixed fee around 223 million euros. And the club wouldn't move until the closing days of the transfer window, between August 29 and 31. That's the money Madrid was planning to eventually spend chasing Olise. Diomandé, even at Leipzig's full 130 million euros ask, is dramatically cheaper, and available right now, not in the window's final week. Which is exactly why this bid is happening in the middle of the summer instead of at the deadline. Madrid isn't waiting around anymore. They pivoted and pivoted fast. From a stalled 223 million euros pursuit to an active 9-figure bid, on a teenager who's already been fought over by 4 different European giants. So let's tie this whole thing together. Right now, nothing is fully signed. But almost everything else about this situation points toward Madrid, not PSG, holding the stronger hand as this drags on. The stated reason Madrid even needs this deal hasn't gone away. It's actually got more specific. Also keen on Manchester City's Rodri, the Bernabeu outfit wants another winger too. And the roster logic behind it is straightforward. Real Madrid already has the likes of Vinicius Jr. and Kylian Mbappé in wide areas, but depth and rotation on the right side has been thin, which is exactly the gap Olise was meant to fill before that pursuit stalled. And there's a domino sitting right behind this deal that shows just how Real Madrid's plans are. Should Diomandé join Real, it would open the door for Brahim Diaz to leave the club before the window closes. That's not a small detail. Madrid have already lined up the roster consequence of landing him, meaning this isn't a speculative flyer, it's a move they've fully planned around internally, right down to who makes way. Leipzig's official line publicly is still that nobody's leaving, but Schäfer's comment about wanting Diomandé to stay next is looking more and more like a negotiating position than an actual plan, especially once you line it up against the club's own valuation math, a number set high enough to sell, not high enough to keep. Meanwhile, PSG's window to close this the way they wanted is shrinking fast. They had the personal terms, they had the years of contract length agreed. What they didn't have was speed, and in a market where Madrid can write a check for 100 million euros and follow it up with more the moment Leipzig says no, speed is exactly what decides these things. If Real Madrid bid again for Diomandé, it will become very difficult for PSG. Liverpool's already out. Arsenal's interest never turned into anything concrete enough to be part of the actual bidding. Bayern and Manchester United got mentioned early in the summer and faded from the conversation once the real money started moving. That leaves this as a straight 2-club fight. And one of those 2 clubs has already shown Leipzig they're willing to come back with a bigger number, the moment the first one gets rejected. That's the story right now, a 19-year-old who was playing relegation football in the Spanish 2nd Division. Barely 18 months ago has become the center of a transfer fight between 2 European giants. With the club, he verbally agreed to join, watching a bigger check get written behind his back. Leipzig's asking price is out there, Madrid's opening bid is out there. Somewhere between the two, this thing gets decided. And given how this summer's gone so far,